We're here today with Jessica, who has discovered a way to show up in her corporate world, in her jobs, with an inner sense of peace, because she has done her inner work so she can show up at work every day in alignment. And now you have the opportunity to hear what Jessica has done to cultivate this incredible stability and truth and peace within herself. Welcome, Jessica. I am so thrilled that you're here. Please share a little bit about yourself.
Heidi, it's so great to see you. I work in software engineering, and I've worked in software engineering for about 30 years. So right from the time I was out of college, had several roles, and over the past 5 or 6 roles, I've played executive roles in various corporate jobs where I manage organizations of software engineers between maybe 100 and 150 people. I originally grew up on the East Coast, moved around a lot as a small child, which is kind of part of my story when we get into kind of my anxiety and challenges there. I came to know you, Heidi, first through Tibetan cranial healing when I was in extreme physical pain after a surgery. And then our healing journey started there until I called you up a year and a half ago and said, hey, I'm out of work. I lost my job. And we did a lot of healing over that last year, which really was fundamental for me that I don't think I would have done otherwise. When I called you up, I was having a deep calling that I was missing something, that there was an answer that was nearby that I just couldn't quite reach. And so I wanted to get in touch with that. And so I just knew it was time for me to reach in and say, how could I do more healing? And I knew at that time it needed to be a self-healing journey, right? I wasn't going to find it outside, but I had no idea how I was going to do it. And so I honestly didn't know when I called you up what that was going to entail. I just knew I knew it was time to do it, and I knew I needed to put myself into it fully. And for the first time in my life, I knew I could carve out the time to really give to it.
Yes, as I also recall, you were quite drawn toward getting in touch with that deeper level because you had already worked with a shaman that had shown you some different things, and your curiosity was really piqued.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. You're right. So working with a shaman, I had that hit of, oh, wow, really, there is a higher self voice that one can hear. So I really wanted to learn how to listen to that fully and be able to differentiate that from my ego voice. And so working in a very, corporate Western job, I had deeply trained myself that my ego was the only voice out there. And so it took a little bit of work. It took some work for me to trust that intuition, learn to hear that voice, hear how subtle that voice is. And even now, I'm much better at listening to it. And I think for a long time, I confused that voice with my ego voice. I was like, oh, that was my ego answering. And now I actually realize that quick, quiet answer is actually my higher self when I'm asking something. Is this good for me? Should I take this path next? And it was a lot of the self-healing work that I needed to do to be able to hear that voice that had always been there.
It's so interesting, that difference between the ego and the higher self. And it's so subtle.
So quiet.
How did you learn to tap into the one versus the other?
Yeah.
And how do you feel the difference?
Yeah, I would say I did not, when I look back on like the group sessions we did and things like that, really learning the different practices to get your vibration up really high. And it was always helpful, at least for me in a group initially, right? To really get that vibration high. And then I would be able to use like the discernment technique you taught with the fingers, largely when I was in group and we'd gotten it really, really high. That was a struggle for me for a long time to do by myself. But as I did the levels of personal healing, it was much easier to get that vibration up And I think now my vibration sits much higher on a day-to-day basis than it ever used to. It's a voice that I learned to listen to, or I've learned to listen to. And when I ask a question in my mind or I think it, I take the first answer I get back, and it's really interesting. My brain can't even finish formulating the question. I emotionally start to ask the question, I hear the answer. And that's how I know it's my higher self and not my ego. Because then if I step back and because I used to say, no, 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 wait, let me finish asking my question. And my intuition, I already know the answer. And if I pause and try to finish asking the question, that's when the ego pops up and says, well, let's look at these 7 different varieties. And then I know it's the ego. But it's literally, I don't even have time to verbalize the question. I just feel the question and then the answer's there. So for me, it's ended up being hearing more than discernment like this. If I want to do this discernment, I have to be outside. I have to be in nature, personally.
And thank you for bringing that in, because we have a number of various different techniques. And the finger technique that you are referring to is what has come to be called the illuminating discernment technique. And it's a technique where we use our fingers to discern different things. And that is just one of so many different techniques to activate the intuition. And so you are beautifully explaining, Jessica, how you utilized some different techniques to activate that intuitive inner voice within you. And that is the journey of activating our intuition. We choose some techniques that helps to charge us up and vibrate and raise that vibration and frequency within us and expand our consciousness so we can call in the answers. What have you found works best for you?
So what works best for me on a daily basis is the divine light awakening. If I want to sit and meditate on something particular, I'll do that several times first. Or, as you know, I have a recording of it that I often listen to when I'm outside or in the car. So that's usually my biggest go-to. I also like the stand in the light and the connect. I do that sometimes, but I generally do it more when it's facilitated by someone else like yourself. Like, I really enjoy that one as well. But for me, the divine light awakening is the starting point.
And so just for the people that don't know the Divine Light Awakening, it's a practice that I learned some practices, gosh, back in 2013 that put me on a path of activating myself. And then it inspired me to develop the Divine Light Awakening practice. And so a lot of the things in there is specifically called in, intuitively guided or downloaded into the specific focus of charging up a person and activating that which in us that heals us at all levels, so we truly remember who we are. Do you find, Jessica, that there's some parts of it that specifically speaks to you, or is it the whole text in its entirety that does it for you?
I think I particularly love the very end, the last section, but it's the whole text. And I remember the very first time I did it was in a day group session, and you gave everybody a sheet, and this was a long time ago. And I was like, well, this is fun. And I felt great with the whole group. And I really tried to practice it when I went home. And it went like this, like I did it for about a week. And then and I guess I don't know if I wasn't ready or if my ego was still too loud. But then when I picked it up last year and I was really committed to like healing myself, then I let myself open up to the idea that it could be powerful. And this was me letting go of a lot of the really strong left brain constructs I'd lived in all my life that was preventing me from accessing stuff like this. And so for me, it was, the end-to-end practice, because it was both how it made me feel, as well as committing to the discipline of openness of what it could be, right? Without being able to see it. I'm so used to like, you do A, you get B. And I had to open myself to, it's not going to be a straight line. It's not going to happen overnight. It's a me process. And so I like the end to end, but I do like that very last section.
Yeah, and that last section you're talking about is the manifestation of the divine light that
Yeah.
really goes into, you can direct the divine light into anything.
Yeah.
anything you may be healing in your body or shifting in your mind or processing through in your emotions or really cleaning up in the very
Yeah.
unconscious levels of your DNA.
And I think also like the energy's building at that point in the reading too. So there's probably that. The feeling is it feels really good at that point.
It has that accumulating effect.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's no limit. There is no limit to how far we can shine our light. And we have a need to
To have that
explore
feeling. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that expanded state and that limitless experience. And we forget that, wow, we have the power. I have the power. You have the power to truly activate yourself and access that expansive state.
Without all the other artificial chemicals. Yeah.
And simply by the power of our word, the power of our breath.
And
Yes.
some belief, right? Because I think if you don't have some belief, then it's very comfortable for your, your ego or your outside world to tell you, no, 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 that's not real. And that's what I had to overcome the most.
Go into a little bit more detail about it. How have you discovered that, wow, it's possible to live a life where you are embracing your corporate world and your spiritual self, your intuitive being, in a world today where they are so separated? You are such a beautiful example, Jessica, about how it's possible to merge the two within yourself.
I think it was a couple of things. So for me, it was the ego and also just the way my brain works. I'm very left-brained. And so I very much wanted to, but I needed to spend some effort letting go of doing A creates B, creates C, and I have to see this path and being open to just the experience, spending more time in the right brain, spending more time in the spaciousness of things can just be. They don't have to be explained. And for me, the big things I needed to heal were for myself. I needed to heal, and that was a big realization. The outside world didn't need to change. I needed to change my relationship with the outside world. And so for me, it was what attachments I had in terms of what core fears I had around safety, because anxiety is at a fundamental level is often a fear of physical safety, right? It may be completely irrational, and you can recognize that. And so I had some deep fears around personal safety and worthiness as well, self-worthiness. And so I spent a lot of time in those sessions understanding better who I am and who I needed to forgive, what attachments, what things did I need to put down. And I'm very visual. So a guided meditation or a session with you where we're thinking about it and we're like, okay, bring up a relationship that's really sticky. And I was like, oh, I've got one, and we'd walk through it and we'd walk through the energy of letting it go and cutting the cords and just feeling a release of letting that person go. My role was not to fix them, heal them, be angry at them. My role was to thank them for what they taught me in that relationship and then let it go. And so doing series of those with different relationships I had with myself, physical healing things on my path to truly learning to love myself.
You have done 10
at least
of the life cycle processes with the VIP processes. And then you did the whole practitioner training where you went through the supervision and the internship with it. And it is so beautiful when you find yourself ready. The universe will conspire with you to create the possibilities to open it up. Are you glad today? Are you grateful today, Jessica, for choosing that?
I was great. It was painful last year, right? I'd never been out of work for that long. I was lucky that I got a little bit of severance and I had money saved up. So I knew financially, like we were going to be able to keep the place we lived in, things like that. The basic needs would be okay. But that did not nullify the kind of existential fear I had, which was one of my fundamental fears, was fear of lack. Like I'm always worried I'm going to run out. I'm not going to have enough to survive. But at the point I lost my job, I was so physically and emotionally burnt out. I knew I needed a break. Now, some of my colleagues, they rushed right back to find the next job. And I've watched them continue to be burned out, and I'm sad for them, but that's their journey. But I knew I had to do some work for myself, and this would give me the space. But it was challenging at times. But I'm beyond grateful that I stayed the course. And I'm working again, and it all worked out kind of in divine timing, right? It showed up at the right time, and all of a sudden, like, oh, now I need to work. But when you're talking about the soul renewal process, for me, in that, what I really had to just let go of was trying to left brain my way through it. So I'm very comfortable with you. You create a very safe environment, a nice, safe container. And I just said, I'm not going to judge what comes up in my mind. Whatever comes up in my mind, I'm going to say it out loud. And then Heidi can hear it and you can reflect back. And it was really this lovely symbiotic where you might say something and I'm like, oh, that actually was what I was thinking. And I would just, so for me, it was huge to just let go of the left brain. Doesn't matter what I say. I'm not here to judge myself. Heidi's certainly not going to judge me. And that allowed for the release. And I remember the part where you go outside, I'm like, I didn't have to understand it. And as a left brain person, I always want to understand everything. And I just went with it. I was like, okay, I need to cough now. I need to cough really, really hard. I'm not going to judge it. I'm just going to do it, and really surrendering to the process is what made the difference. Because if I had fought it and played my left brain world, I probably would have made very minimal progress because I would have been trying to judge my way through it. And so the surrender was the key thing for me.
Surrender. Let's just take a moment to taste that word and to reflect on what surrender really means. Because it has been used in a lot of negative connotations.
Sure. Yeah.
But the surrender that you're talking about is this deepening of a relationship within yourself, of honoring everything that you are.
And for me, the word that comes to mind for surrender was trust. And it was, for me personally, it was to trust in the process, that it was just, you don't know, try it, right? It was to trust that I would be safe with whatever I found. That I would, and when I say found, like I would be safe in like our discussion and what I shared with you in terms of like, it was going to be okay. It was going to be okay for me to crack that Pandora's box of emotions and pull out the sticky ones and look at them. But it was safe to do that. And that surrender for me is saying, open the door. It's going to be okay. But you're not going to get any better unless you do crack that door and look at that sticky thing you don't want to look at. And then as you look at it, you make it a little less sticky and a little less sticky until it can float away and it's not there anymore, right? But without that surrender, like I've tried Western therapy and all these things for especially for anxiety, and it taught me some wonderful coping mechanisms that help me navigate the world. But I don't think that type of setting gets you to the deeply surrender space to really unpack some of those things and let go of the attachment of it so you can blow it away in the wind. I was exhausted at carrying the burden. And so I really, really wanted to let go of the burden of what I was holding back by having my ego suppress those things. And what it's meant for me now is, and this is going to sound so pop culture, but what I found is peace. What I found is peace in my physical body, peace in my brain. And so, when I went back into my job, sure, I get stressed. And especially those first 6 months where you're like, what am I doing here? These people are great. I don't like these people. Why am I, all the things in the first 6 months as you're trying to navigate. But what I have is a much better ability to step back from those, see those as external experiences, they are not the meaning of why I'm here or why any of us are here, or, they don't detract from my belief and I can watch them from afar and say, okay, that's a situation. I don't have to become as emotionally embroiled in it. I think it's a Buddhist phrase. Oh no, it's a little thing I read in a book by a Zen Buddhist monk. Everything is already okay. It's already okay. I look at every terrible thing, not terrible thing, but I look at everything that's happened in my life, every struggle. It's now okay. It's already okay, even if it doesn't feel okay in the moment. And so I found that spaciousness to continue to be that spiritual being while I go out in the outside world and do what I have to get a paycheck.
Yes. You named a fear that you used to experience a lot, that fear of, is there enough? That
Yeah.
whole aspect
Am
of,
I enough? Both of them, right?
yes, exactly. And so often, most often, pretty much always, the fears that we project outwardly towards the world is a fear that comes with, am I enough?
When I was going through the am I worthy and what my fears are, I would put people in boxes. And I would say, well, that's okay that they can hear they are intuitive. They can hear their higher self. I wasn't chosen to be one of those people that could do that. So I would create this us versus them category that elevated them, which I didn't realize I was doing, but it elevated them and diminished myself. And I would just say, oh, it's not for me. And so I had to kind of get over that. Not kind of, I very much had to. That was kind of my big hurdle.
Do you feel that integration, them versus me?
Yeah, it's kind of the yes, like there isn't it's a we all are, right? There's just a unity, there's just a oneness, right? And then within that, I'm now, what is my path? I'm not worried. I don't need to be jealous of someone who I perceive has intuition or something else. I'm just very comfortable with what I have and what I know about myself.
What inspiration would you like to share with somebody who is on their journey in wanting to the destroying of
Yeah.
the them versus me,
Yeah.
or giving power away to them?
My message is the work is absolutely worth it. The end game of the change is more than you can imagine. And the feeling of separateness is a lie you're telling yourself. And you have to decide that you're ready to stop telling yourself the lie. And you have to believe it's a lie and see your way forward. Because that's what I had in myself. And that's what I saw in so many other people when we were doing it together. Like it's easier to see someone else's lie, right? Because it seems obvious when you're watching them, but it was a lie I was telling myself. And I had to do the work to put down why I needed to tell that lie to myself. Absolutely worth it. You should absolutely do it. There's no going back after you do it. You couldn't take it away from me now, but the start is you're lying to yourself.
It's that inner journey of discovering your own truth and remembering who you truly are.
Yeah.
And that inner work that you're referring to, Jessica, is that cleaning up in the unconscious
Yep.
of all the coverings of lies and belief systems that you were taught to believe in.
Yep.
And underlying traumas that caused the blockages.
Took me a while to get to the stickiness of family and growing up patterns because I generally had a very good growing up life. And so I never really looked at them like, well, that can't be the source of anything. But really getting at when your patterns are formed, when you're little, when you're 2, when you're 3, and there are things that are going on in dynamics, until I really dug into how that shaped who I became as a person, I wasn't able to get to the core of some of my fears. And so it was definitely karmic, but I had to do the right in front of me work as well.
And you bring up karma. And this is such a loaded word.
Yeah.
There's such misunderstandings about it, and it's been used in so many different ways. So when you say karma, what does it mean to you?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because it is so misused and I probably don't use it in the right way either. So when I think about it for the practices is like, what past life healing can you bring up? What have you brought forward? And that constitutes a belief system that I'm comfortable with. But I think even with folks that don't feel comfortable with that, because I had one of my friends go through the process I facilitated, and she's not comfortable with that at all. And so the feelings she had were much more abstract and just emotions. And I'm more comfortable leaning into what the picture of it could be. So during that practice, that's what it meant to me. As I've done more about that and read more about that, my feelings about it have evolved, that it's just all types of all inclusiveness of all the parts I could be here in the now, here in the past, here in the future. And at that time, I needed very crisp storylines to attach to. I think that was a little left brainness in me. And now I'm much more comfortable in just the abstract of feeling into it. I don't need to understand the why or the where it came from. I can just feel into what the emotion or the stickiness is of it to explore something to let it go.
Thank you for sharing that. That difference in healing work, to do it very logical minded. It certainly has its time and place. And then that shift into surrendering and trusting that the energy is doing its work within and doing the cleaning up without that logic minded having to work so
Having to
hard.
label it. Yeah.
This logical minded healing work, it's very gratifying, and it creates great clarity and insights and messages coming through. And there's also a lot of effort.
I had deeply seated body beliefs on doing. It's that A, then B, then C. If I do the work, then I'll get the outcome I want. And the work wasn't, I don't know, was it hard? It required dedication. And maybe that is a type of doing. And then as a result, towards the end of the year, I got to enjoy the being state, the flow state. And for me, I think that's about the ongoing health and wellness, is now that I can live more in the being and the flow state. That's the outcome for me. But I think it'll always be a structure, a little bit of a struggle for me for how I'm wired, right? Like, and then when I go back and get a job, you get rewarded daily for doing, and that reinforces it. But my focus is on staying kind of, for me personally, how can I as a body, as a being, stay in the flow state and let the other things, that's what I was kind of saying. I can watch work from the outside, and that's like, can I stay in the flow state? If you need that churny thing to happen on and over there, I'm just going to watch you do that. And then I'll meet you on the other side, And so that's probably how I'm, making it easier on myself without even realizing I'm doing it.
Thank you for bringing that forth, that we can be in this world and do what is expected or required and our responsibilities. And we are doing with an awareness that we're so much more. And that's what I feel when you shared about you have acquired this peace. There's no pop culture about that, because we all are desiring and looking for that peace within ourselves. And what I'm hearing you share is that you're experiencing this. Yes, you are operating within the world, but you're being something more. It's like the observer that is witnessing all of the show going on, but you have that peace within yourself because you're so aware that you're so much more, and you're tapped into something so powerful. And then you are going about everything in the world with that inner peace. Does that resonate?
Oh, absolutely. And that's what I mean. It's like, it's not that I'm actively trying to heal something now, but that I can sit in that space. I'm not picking up additional junk. And I think the reason I said like pop culture for peace, it's kind of like the karma, right? There's so many definitions and there's so many people selling inner peace that I look at them and I'm like, you do not hold that. You're trying to sell, you know? And so and that's why I hesitate to use the word. It's a very special word to me now, to have achieved that inner sense of calm that I personally never thought I was wired chemically, neurologically, whatever, to experience. The joy of knowing no one can take that away from me.
Thank you for clarifying that. And wow, what a powerful place. I can feel the stability in that truth. Nobody is going to come take that away from me. To walk through life in that regard, that is where the peace, the balance, the stability is. And it all comes from remembering that you're it.
Yeah.
You're it. Nobody's going to come and heal you.
Right.
Nobody's going to come and save you.
Previously, like a year or two ago, if I got a pain in my body or something hurts, I'm very outdoorsy. I like to do, as you know, a lot of athletic stuff, and I would get a pain, I would immediately seek out someone external to myself to fix it. Oh, I should see a doctor. I should see a chiropractor. I should see the acupuncturist. And now my first reaction is, it's probably going to go away. Like, let's give it a few, instead of like, I would put my anxiety right into that spot and I'd blow it up. Oh my gosh, I'm never going to run again because I have this little teeny twinge in my pinky toe, right? Like, and I would help blow it up. And now I'm like, well, let me give it another little bit and it's probably fine. Or I sit calmly and I say, what's it trying to tell me? Is it trying to tell me I've been doing too much? Is it trying to tell me to take a break for what, And so I've shifted that desire to look outside myself first for help. I'm not saying I never will, right? I'm not saying, oh, I don't go to doctor, but it's the orientation of where I start first, and I start inside first now.
Thank you for speaking to that. This is so important because that fear that comes up with pain and the storylines that then come with that fear and the worry and, oh no, my life is over, all the things that come with that.
I must stop it. Yeah.
And then, yes, the tendency in our world today is seeking that outside help and going to other people, fix me. When we do that, there is that giving them away somehow.
Right.
And what we don't realize is that when we do that, we come out shorter within ourselves, and the pain will actually, at a deeper level, get even worse.
Right.
Even though we may get some relief because that person that we found to heal us, that we give our power away, they will take some of that energetic, whatever that cause is of the pain, they will take that on. And so it will feel like there's some relief. But never to disregard the energy exchange that happened in that relationship or that business deal that just happened. It's very serious. It's an energy exchange that happens. So instead, when we consciously, there's nothing wrong with going to get a massage or getting a treatment. Of course not. There's nothing wrong with that. It's the consciousness and the awareness of it. I have what it takes to heal myself, and I choose to work with somebody who I'd like to explore more within myself with. They can say something that can inspire me. They can say something and do something that can show me some new tools and practices. It's that awareness that we hold on to our power. I have what it takes to heal myself. And it is more fun. It's more enjoyable when we're doing it with somebody else.
Right. And that's the difference. Is I used to go with, I can't heal myself. this external person. So I'm going to do energy exchange in the form of money. And if it's more expensive, then it's heightened, like in my psyche somewhere of like the stakes are higher. Oh my gosh. And if it doesn't fix it. But I was doing exactly that. I was giving all the power to the practitioner because my belief system was they fix people. I can't fix myself. Right.
This is so crucial in our world today. That consciousness that comes with when we take our power back and we realize I am good enough to heal myself. I have what it takes to save myself. It's all within me. It's all within me. And everything that I am experiencing in my life is in response to what is going on within me.
Yep.
And that shift to truly come into that experience of life, ooh, it's so good. It's so magical. It's so extraordinary. It's such a blessing. And that's where the peace is.
Yeah. It's interesting as you were saying that, I don't know why this popped into my head, but it comes back to the surrender of the year we spent together working on this. And I spent a lot of time on myself doing this. Was another part of the surrender was I didn't have to understand how all these pieces were going to come together for me. Like you would introduce a practice or a phrase. I was picking up all these tools and techniques from you. And there was part of me that could have said, I don't know how the heck these are going to go together, right? There were some times where I was like, okay, well, I'll just try it, right? I'm open. I'm going to just try it. And I can only look back now, like during this conversation, and realize I don't exactly know where it all came together, but they all came together to land me in this place of peace and flow. And so it was interesting for me to think about is, it was not like, here, do this textbook. By the time you get to chapter 17, you're going to be good. And it was more a series of tools and techniques you shared that I then had to put together in the way that worked for me to move through this weaving path that I knew I was making progress, but I don't think I knew where I would end up. And I can only look back now and say, okay, it all came together in this new sense of my being, if that makes sense.
Yes. What I'm hearing you talk about is the integration. That you went out and you learned a lot of different practices. You tried a lot of different things. And then you allow that to digest and integrate within yourself. Mm-hmm. Like when we go to a buffet, and we pick a lot of different foods, and then we bring the foods on our plate back to the table. We sit down and we eat it. And all of that food in the stomach has to come together and being digested. And in order for us to absorb the nutrients, that's that whole integration phase that I'm hearing you talk about. Is there anything, Jessica, that you would like to share to somebody that is just setting out on this journey and they can feel that there is something more to their life and they just don't know where to get started? What would you say? What would you say to somebody?
I think to that, I would honestly say, get started. Stop. I'm a very direct person, so I'm a stop making excuses as to why you can't, right? Because if you're hearing this, there's a reason, right? You're poking around, you're wondering. Take that first step, and it's take the responsibility for that first step. Because most times when I hear people say they can't, they find an external reason to not gift themselves with this healing. And that's just a way of saying I'm not worthy. And because when the excuse is the work or the kids or the family or I'm tired or I don't have time, you're making an excuse for why you're not worthy of experiencing health and well-being.
A year and a half ago, you took that step. You didn't know what was going to happen. You didn't know, but you still took the step. And you found, wow, there is such a wealth of loving energy that came and held you and caught you and has carried you through and guided you through and opened your heart and opened yourself up to your all-knowing self. And it starts with that one step you're talking about. Well, thank you so much, Jessica. Your beautiful messages to people that are ready to get started and ready to dive deeper and to explore that joy and the peace and the intuition and the integration of the worlds. That's what I'm really hearing you talk about, is it's possible to integrate the corporate, materialistic, outer world with that beauty of the soul-aligned world within. A meeting point between those two worlds, and there is peace in that. There's peace in that.
Very much so.
Amazing. So let's end with remembering that it's never too late to heal at all levels. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you,
Thank you, Heidi.
Namaste.